I'm Lipakshi Khurana, coming up in the next 30 minutes. Israel claims new airstrike on a Gaza refugee camp kills second Hamas leader as first civilian evacuees leave Gaza. Britain hosts Global AI Summit. Indian Minister Rajiv Chandrasekhar to participate in discussions on establishing collaborative framework for artificial intelligence later today. India's External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar addresses Indian diaspora in Portugal, urges for contribution in enhancing diplomatic ties. Pakistan starts rounding up undocumented foreigners, mostly Afghans, had set a midnight November 1st deadline for them to leave or face expulsion. And in sports, India will take on Sri Lanka in the ICC World Cup match today in Mumbai. And on to details now. As Israel-Hamas conflict rages on, another Hamas leader was killed in second strike by Israel on Wednesday at the Gaza's Jabalia refugee camp in 2 days. The Israeli military said that its fighter jet struck a Hamas command and control complex in Jabalia based on precise intelligence, killing the head of the group, Mohammed Asar. To combat terrorism in the besieged enclave, Israeli forces bombed the densely populated Gaza Strip in its campaign to wipe out Hamas. Well, this comes as at least 320 foreign passport holders and some injured Gazans left the Palestinian enclave through the Rafah crossing into Egypt on Wednesday. This was the first batch of the civilian evacuees to benefit from a deal mediated by Qatar. Under the deal brokered between Egypt, Israel and Hamas, 81 wounded people and an initial list of 500 foreign passport holders were expected to be allowed out of the Gaza Strip in the coming days, though there is no timeline for how long it will remain open for evacuation. While the initial group of foreign nationals, including Americans, departed Gaza on Wednesday, U.S. added that Washington expects exit of its citizens and others to continue over the next several days.
We want to make sure we can get U.S. citizens and their family members out as safely as possible. In the past 24 hours, we have informed U.S. citizens and their family members with whom we are in contact that they will be assigned specific departure dates. We have asked them to continue to monitor their email regularly over the next 24 to 72 hours for specific instructions about how to exit. The U.S. Embassy in Cairo is standing by to provide assistance to U.S. citizens as they enter Egypt. The situation remains extremely fluid, but this has been an important breakthrough, and we will keep working on it to ensure that all of the U.S. citizens who wish to depart safely from Gaza can do so.
Meanwhile, Israeli President Isaac Herzog, in an address on Wednesday, exhorted his fellow citizens to stand united and steadfast as his country waged a military campaign against terrorism.
The enemy seeks to kindle hatred between us, between Jewish citizens and Arab citizens. We have to fight back against this without compromise and single-mindedly. We have to reject every urge towards hatred and racism towards different groups among us. To recall the dozens of Arab citizens who paid with their lives, those at home and those in battle. And the most important is to recall the responsibility and the mutual respect that exemplifies the Arab community in Israel.
Moving on, the impact that artificial intelligence could have on our lives will continue to be discussed at a global forum in the UK later today. A new agreement has been signed by 28 countries, promising closer international collaboration to ensure the safe future development of AI. From the UK, John Beaver reports.
AI is being widely used already, everything from social media to fraud detection in banking. We're also seeing it with things like picture and video editing, as well as, of course, as ChatGPT. Progress is rapid. A few years ago, AI was a concept rather than a reality. This conference is viewed by some as the world trying to catch up, to try and look at what the future issues might be and to get ahead of them. It's taking place here at Bletchley Park with leaders in AI invited, including Elon Musk, who's called for a third-party referee to stop AI getting out of hand. The so-called Bletchley Declaration is stopping short of that regulation, but has been signed by 28 countries and has recognised the potential for serious, even catastrophic harm, either deliberate or unintentional, that could be caused by AI, and the global effort needed to counter that. Politicians from the developing world have been represented here as well, many of them urging those gathered at the summit to recognise the positive impact AI could have on the developing world, and that those impacts have to be accessible to all. John Beaver, Bletchley Park in the UK, reporting for DD India.
Meanwhile, India says the future of artificial intelligence needs to be shaped by countries coming together for the collective good. Rajiv Chandrasekhar, the Minister of State for Electronics and Information Technology, says governments don't have to choose between innovation and regulation, but trust is essential. Rajiv Chandrasekhar speaks with DD India's Julia Chapman on what India hopes to achieve from the event.
We've heard a lot today about the need to balance innovation with regulation. Where does India stand on that?
No, I don't think this is a binary that we need to choose between innovation and regulation. Our Prime Minister in our country is very clearly invested in acknowledging that governments of democratically elected countries like ours have a primary duty to the safety and trust of our citizens, whether that's law and order in the real world or safety and trust on the internet and vis-a-vis these new technologies. So we will certainly keep safety and trust of our citizens as our goal, and we will ensure that any platform, AI or otherwise, are accountable for any harm that the platform causes to our citizens.
And when it comes to protecting citizens, do you believe that that is more of a national project, or should there be international regulation?
Look, we must also accept that the internet, the way the world of tech today exists, there are no borders. And so even if I in India have these great laws and great regulations, the crime or the harm can be perpetrated in another jurisdiction. The victim could be in India or vice versa. And the actual impact of the crime could be in a third jurisdiction. So I think the very nature of the ubiquitousness of the internet, and therefore of tech platforms on the internet, including AI, but not limited to AI, require countries to wake up to the fact that however outstanding the country is in terms of its own laws, that they will not be able to survive or succeed unless the corresponding other economies or the countries mirror their approach towards regulating the internet and regulating AI.
And with that in mind, what do you make of China's involvement in this summit?
Look, I think there's no disputing the fact that China is a major presence in tech, a major presence in AI. They have their ambitions. As long as countries, big or small, come onto the table and accept these basic principles, that at the end of the day, the future of tech is not going to look like any one country dominating it and sort of giving it out as if it was some kind of a favor. Rather, it should be from ground up designed to be an effort where every country, big or small, the global south or the developed nations and their people can enjoy the benefits of these technologies. So this is our philosophy. This is our Prime Minister has said this during the G20, that the world is one family. Our own conduct about DPIs, the digital public infrastructure, is that one that says that innovation should be accessible even to the global south.
Moving on, U.S. President Joe Biden visited a farm in Minnesota to tout his administration's investment in rural America. He announced more than $5 billion in spending, which will go towards adapting farming to help climate change and expanding high-speed internet access. More from our correspondent, Nick Harper.
Well, this may have been an official engagement, but it served the dual purpose of looking a lot like a campaign stop, a way to boost the president's position ahead of next November's election. Announcing new investment, Biden said that his administration was ensuring jobs were not exported overseas and instead created here at home, as well as expanding American for-export production. Now, the American heartland became the backdrop to champion investment in rural communities, a way to try and win over blue-collar voters. This is a kick-off event for an administration-wide tour of rural communities, with top officials hitting 15 states over the coming weeks, including several of the important swing states. Now, the White House has also been keen to point out that the $5 billion investment announced on Wednesday was, they said, just a fraction of the administration's overall support for rural communities. They mentioned $11 billion to bring clean energy to rural communities, as well as $90 billion spent on expanding access to high-speed internet. It's certainly a shift for the president, focusing on a firmly domestic agenda after 3 weeks of intense attention on the ongoing conflict between Israel and Hamas. Nick Harper in Washington, reporting for DD India.
Meanwhile, Joe Biden is expected to meet his Chinese counterpart Xi Jinping later this month. The White House says the leaders of the world's two largest economies have agreed in principle to meet on the sidelines of the Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation Summit in California. DD India correspondent Kate Fisher reports.
Well, the White House has said that President Biden is expected to have a tough conversation with President Xi, saying that the intense competition between the two countries requires intense diplomacy, and that US policy towards China has not changed. It's said, though, that the logistical details of this meeting were still being put together, but that it was planning for a constructive conversation. The high-stakes face-to-face meeting comes as the White House is navigating major wars in Ukraine and Israel, and that is putting additional pressure on an already strained US-China relationship, which has been damaged in recent years by a trade war that began during the Trump administration. Xi Jinping is Russian President Vladimir Putin's most powerful financial ally, and Chinese support is critical to keeping the Russian war effort alive. Earlier this month, those two leaders met in Beijing to discuss how to deepen their ties, and this relationship is a major concern for the White House. President Biden has frequently framed the battle between democracy and autocracy as central to his presidency. Other issues that are likely to be on the agenda when they meet include trade, the economy, and human rights concerns. This face-to-face meeting follows others between high-level American officials like Secretary of State Antony Blinken, Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen, as well as the head of the CIA, the National Security Advisor, and the Commerce Secretary, and John Kerry, who is the Special Envoy on Climate, one of the few areas where the two countries are trying to find common ground. Kate Fisher in Washington, reporting for DD India.
And now let's take a news from news around the world. Britain's Queen Camilla visited an animal sanctuary on the second day of her state visit to Kenya. During the visit, she interacted with the kids from the local club and resident women and got gifts from them. Dressed as terrifying Halloween characters, police officials arrested two people allegedly engaged in drug dealing in Lima. The suspects were members of the clan Balboa gang selling drugs in the neighborhood. Police also seized 1,568 small packets of cocaine and cash in the operation. Pablo Picasso's Femella de Montre and Jean-Michel Basquiat painting are among the top lots at Sotheby's upcoming fall art auctions in New York City. Picasso's masterpiece is estimated around $120 million, while Basquiat's painting is estimated to fetch between $40 and $60 million. The auctions will kick off on November 8th. And still to come on this edition of DD India Live. Preparations and last leg for opening of Sri Ganesha Temple, the largest Hindu temple in Germany. In a heart-touching gesture, Little Master's statue unveiled in Wankhede Stadium. Stay with us to know the details.
turning crisis into opportunity, transforming ideas into action, stories of real change, tales of sustainable solution. This series is going to tell stories of such change makers. Watch Change Makers on DD India.
Welcome back. You're watching DD India Live. I'm Lipakshi Khurana. And moving on, Donald Trump's son testified at a New York civil fraud trial accusing the former U.S. president and his family businesses of inflating asset values. Trump Jr. has told the court in New York that he was not directly involved in preparing the so-called statements, which state prosecutors say were fraudulently inflated. DD India's Jody Jacobs reports from New York.
In a brief appearance on Wednesday, the first of the adult Trump children to testify in the matter, Donald Trump Jr. said he had little to do with the financial practices of the organization. He said he and his brother Eric took over the management of the company when their father assumed the presidency back in 2017 and maintains he had little involvement in financial matters. This particular lawsuit by New York Attorney General Letitia James accuses the former president and his two sons of inflating their assets by billions of dollars to secure better loan terms. It's just one of the many trials the former president faces as he campaigns to retake the White House. There's a lot at stake in this trial: $250 million in damages and a possible ban on the iconic Trump organization from operating in New York. Donald Trump has denied any wrongdoing and has repeatedly accused both the Attorney General and the judge of political bias. The former president was not in court on Wednesday, but he is set to testify on Monday. His other son, Eric Trump, is also expected to testify this week, as well as Ivanka Trump. Jody Jacobs in New York, reporting for DD India.
Well, in Pakistan, police dismantled mud houses in an Afghan colony on the outskirts of Islamabad late on Wednesday. Pakistan cited security reasons, brushing off calls to reconsider from the United Nations, rights groups and Western embassies. Residents of the demolished Afghan colony complained that they had not been given enough time. They had been given 2 weeks to clear out. Some of those ordered to leave have spent decades in Pakistan. The Interior Ministry of Pakistan said more than 140,000 people had already voluntarily left after days. The United Nations Refugee Agency has been warning that Pakistan's planned expulsion of more than 1 million undocumented foreign nationals risks triggering a human rights catastrophe.
Keeping in view the situation in Afghanistan, we are calling upon the government to continue to provide protection and safety to all those people who are vulnerable and who are living in Pakistan. As you know that Afghanistan is going through severe humanitarian challenges, including human rights challenges for women and girls. And the government of Pakistan is implementing this plan, and we believe that such plans will have serious implications for all those who have been displaced and who may face serious protection risk upon their return. So we are appealing the government to come up with a comprehensive, sustainable mechanism to manage and register all these people who need international protection in Pakistan.
And thousands of migrants gathered in southern Mexico on Wednesday, calling for passage through the country to reach its northern border with the United States. Traveling with families, migrants gathered in the town of Huixtla in Chiapas state for break ahead of the journey towards north. Having lost everything during the Eta and Iota hurricanes in 2020, the poverty and insecurity in their home countries that forced them to migrate. This year has been record numbers crossing the Darien Gap region connecting Panama and Colombia. And a Russian drone attack set ablaze the Kremenchuk oil refinery in central Ukraine. The fire at the Kremenchuk refinery was quickly put out. The extent of the damage was not clear. It also knocked out power supply in 3 villages. Meanwhile, Ukrainian forces had repelled Russian attacks in frontline sectors in the east and northeast. Ukraine's Air Force said air defenses shot down 18 of 20 drones and a missile fired by Russia overnight. Okay, U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken and Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin will meet with the External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar and Defense Minister Rajnath Singh later this month in New Delhi. The U.S. State Department on Wednesday said they will discuss concerns and developments in the Indo-Pacific. The meeting comes amid tensions between the United States and China in the Indo-Pacific region. Moving on, India's External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar addressed the Indian community in Portugal. Dr. S. Jaishankar was accompanied by Portugal's Foreign Minister João Cravino. In his address, EAM highlighted Portugal's contribution in promoting closer India-EU ties and also urged the Indian community to contribute to the 50th anniversary celebrations of India-Portugal diplomatic ties. Well, in the second day of a visit to Sri Lanka, Indian Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman will attend the commemoration of the bicentennial anniversary of the arrival of India-origin Tamils in Sri Lanka. She will also address the India-Sri Lanka Business Summit. The minister will oversee signing of the MOU for solar electrification of religious places in Sri Lanka under Indian assistance, along with the inauguration of 2 new branches of State Bank of India. Earlier on the first day of her visit, Sitharaman paid obeisance at the Sri Dalada Maligawa temple at Kandy. Sitharaman is on a 3-day visit to Sri Lanka. Well, in Berlin, a decade and a half's worth of construction is nearing completion on what will become Germany's largest Hindu temple. The community-led project comes as the Indian diaspora in Germany continues to grow, particularly as Europe's largest economy continues to seek out young Indians to work in strategically important fields like engineering, IT and medicine. DD India correspondent Trent Murray was given an exclusive behind-the-scenes tour of the Sri Ganesha temple as the final preparations are made for its opening.
The hustle and bustle of the German capital can feel a world away from the spiritual surroundings of the subcontinent, but a dedicated and very determined Indian community has been working to build a home away from home for the city's Hindus.
Our idea was motivation was to involve South, North, West, East all together and make an Indian unity. Not only India and also Singapore and Nepal, Bhutan and Sri Lanka, that we are welcoming them also as a part of our community. But the main thing was interested that we will have a unity of India. India should build a temple because we are living so much years in Germany and we have never built a temple in Germany. That was our idea and our dream also.
15 years worth of craftsmanship, creativity and community have helped transform this plot of land in a suburban park to a place of spiritual reflection. A labour of love spanning different generations, young and old pitching in to turn a long-held dream into a reality. The project has relied on an army of skilled architects and artisans travelling from India each year. But following 5,000-year-old Hindu building specifications has proved challenging in some areas.
They made a complete deities with cement because all in Indian temple they will put all with stone manufactured. But we cannot bring all stones here. It is very costly. Then we found an architect that will make complete with cement. It shows like that stone.
Once completed, Sri Ganesha will be Germany's largest Hindu temple, catering for a community that continues to increase in size thanks to the growing economic, political and social ties between New Delhi and Berlin.
Indians, they are hardworking people, they are sincere people, and they gel really well with the society. And that's the reason why the students who come here, they assimilate very well, they start their jobs. Now we also see, Berlin is a startup hub, so a lot of Indians are also coming up with their startup ideas. I've seen many people having their own companies, and that's the reason, people are attracted to this place as well, because this is also, when they come, they have a feeling of home.
Of course, a project of this scale also comes with a sizable price tag. But from day one, leaders here said they didn't want this temple built using credit or debt. Instead, every brick, every tile, every lick of paint has been funded entirely through private donations. And to avoid having to telephone the bank to ask for a loan, the temple's leaders say it's been young Indians who have rallied to make sure there were enough resources available.
The youngsters, they also thought that in order to keep that going, in order to give this heritage further to our children, to the next generation, second, third generation, we need to jump in, we need to pitch in. And that's the reason the community has come forward, and in big numbers. So it's money coming from donations, however big or small it is. Temples are always built with donation because it doesn't belong to an individual. It belongs to the community. Even youngsters, students who are scarce on funds, they also come and donate whatever and however they can.
The aim is for Sri Ganesha to be completed in the first quarter of next year. Working closely with the Indian Embassy, the opening will mark a major milestone for the men, women and children that make up the country's vibrant Indian community, laying the foundations, quite literally, for future generations to come together and celebrate the gods that lie at the heart of the world's oldest religion. Trent Murray for DD India, Berlin.
And in sports, India will square off with Sri Lanka in the ICC World Cup match on Thursday in Mumbai. A win will ensure that India leaps into the knockout phase. India has remained undefeated in the tournament, winning all its 6 matches. On the other hand, Sri Lanka has lost 4 of their 6 matches. India and Sri Lanka have clashed with each other 9 times in the ICC Cricket World Cup. Each team has won 4 matches, while 1 game yielded no result. Meanwhile, South Africa thrashed New Zealand by 190 runs in ICC Cricket World Cup 2023 in Pune on Wednesday. Well, that's all for this edition of DD India Live. I'm Lipakshi Khurana. From all of us here in Delhi, thanks for watching DD India News Hour.